People on the internet are brain dead. This is more or less common knowledge. From the conception of the internet, we as the slightly intelligent monkeys we are have all begun to start to develop this dependency to it. Our interests, our patience, our temper, they are all affected by what we consume daily. So when fast-paced short-form content has begun to rise and start to dominate a majority of our lives, people start saying things like this.
Eh, 0 out of 10. Too much yapping.
I keep seeing this take about how Season 3 of Tensura is going way too slow and there's been way too many meetings, and it got me interested because, to me, that was the entertaining part. But I guess I can see where people are coming from. People came in with the expectations that this season was going to be super battle heavy for whatever reason, and considering how many more shows we're getting where throwing hands is the primary objective, I'm not that surprised. But it is sort of weird to me considering that Tensura as a series very clearly tells you what it's going to be like from the start. In fact, it's a big part of Tensura's identity. Tensura is a city-building anime just as much as it is power fantasy. If anything, the city-building aspect of it is probably what makes it feel so much more enticing than other shows with similar concepts. The story of how a slime took a random bum-ass goblin village from being on the verge of collapse to an economical center in its own world is a great way to show progression creatively. You get to look back and see a physical difference in the nation's war assets, the alliances and connections they've gained, as well as the physical advancement of the city itself. For people to call it the very thing that makes this show have any identity the boring part is kinda crazy, no? And the only reason I can come up with for any of this is that so many people are being fed brain rot that we're getting to the point that we're choking on it.
I black out before I tap out, bitch.
Hi, darling.
With the amount of brain rot out there, what else would you expect? Of course they wouldn't be able to handle some itty bitty dialogue, but we can't just blame everything on TikTok.
You sure about that?
So instead of shifting the blame like we're Logan Paul, how about we actually take a second and use our brains? We gotta be intelligent monkeys and all, remember? And in our quest to use our little monkey brains, we gotta get into the details. What makes exposition important, so to speak? And the thing is, most people seem to misunderstand the word exposition. When people see that word, the first thing that comes to mind is yap. And on the other hand, whenever someone uses that word, they're usually just trying to deflect the fact that the show they're trying to defend has a master's in yapology. Let me give you an example. This is good dialogue.
And that means no one here is my enemy. Because I have no enemies.
And this is yapping.
Drop the Krispy Kreme, Serpico! We need your help
You
here!
my house look like my father and my brother after 9 months or
Yeah, diggity.
There's a difference between pointless, excessive dialogue that isn't valuable or at the bare minimum entertaining, and meetings that build a setting and establish tangible relations between entities. And hey, if that's not your cup of tea, that's all good. You can go watch the presidential debate. I'm sure that'll keep you laughing.
Person eligible for what I've been able to do with.
Simple things like the whole Hinata ramen scene and the scene with Geld and Reamer speak so much volume of their characters that was otherwise lacking. Wouldn't getting more familiar with the characters that are overshadowed be a positive thing? Excluding the politics, there are plenty of scenes this season that made characters just that much more rounded. And look, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you, but Tensura kinda sorta doesn't have the best character writing. It's not bad, but Reamer is not going around dropping quotes like, "I have no enemies." The characters are just about par for what you expect, but even still, it just adds a layer of foundation that the story can build on. Someone like Diablo, who was just introduced as nothing more than another Reamer sim to add to the list, was given so much more spotlight this season. Within these episodes, he's shown how cynical and intelligent he is. He goes from just being another Reamer simp to a reliable individual who just so happens to pitch a tent whenever he gets his hands on that Reamer bathwater. What makes a story like Tensura entertaining and memorable is a climactic ending, built up by a bunch of different ideas, emotions, plots, and characters. If Hinata and Rimuru fought in episode 2 or 3 like everyone wanted, or even if this entire conflict was stretched out and started earlier, it would have felt bland, boring, pointless, just straight garbage. But as much as I hate to say this, I'm gonna have to pull out the anime fan special. Changing my opinion. Well, not really, but As much as I want to glaze this series, I've gotta say the anime adaptation sometimes really feels like a slideshow. Colored manga, you know? What I think really puts people off about all these meetings is just how it was adapted. Because in the manga and the light novel, you can read at your own pace. The visuals are more or less up to you to either fill in the gaps or just completely make up in your head. But the anime is kinda done an injustice to the series. Every meeting is just a still image after still image. Nothing on screen really captures your eye. So it tends to feel like nothing is happening except people talking back and forth. It's not that the anime did a bad job per se. They just seem to do the absolute bare minimum, which in this situation kinda ruined the flow. I feel like one of the best examples of this is my least favorite part of the season so far. The big Hinata vs Rimuru fight felt so unimportant. Neither the fight nor the weight of the fight felt serious. Even with how everything plays out, even with all the build-up, it felt like the battle had no real meaning. It felt somehow shallow after all that exposition. The lack of any sort of visual eye candy alongside how fast it ended made it seem too underwhelming. The light novel and manga treated this fight so much more seriously. The light novel had time to explain things in detail, and the manga's visuals made it entertaining. The anime felt so lifeless, except for a few points. They spent all that time going through all that exposition just to leave one of the least climactic feeling endings in the fight. The whole fight was partially meant to show the massive difference in Rimuru and Hinata's strength, even though Hinata was now trying. But it really didn't portray that well. So it's pretty fair to say that it wasn't that there were too many meetings this season or the content was unimportant. It was more so that it was just an unfortunately poorly done adaptation. At least for the first half. As far as I can tell, the second part of the season is going a lot better. One thing I will say though is Tensura has always slightly neglected to make these fights feel emotionally meaningful to the characters themselves, but always done a good job of making the fights have an important global impact. Definitely more than it affects the characters on a personal level. If you aren't convinced, just think back. Whoa. Nope, too far back. Think back to the last season of Tensura. The climactic ending was that fight with Claymore. To Rimuru, it was sort of a personal revenge and nothing more, but from a political standpoint, it completely rearranged the power structure of the world. Millam's domain became a super country, and Rimuru's nation became a point of incredible concern. Considering how an incredibly powerful entity popped out of nowhere and is looking to take over the entire trade route, nobody could ignore that. This entire chain of events just so happened as the result of the build-up all the way from episode 1 of season 1 to the last few episodes of season 2. That was the time it took for that whole chapter of the story to end. Most of the villains and a lot of the direction Tempest took led to this. It was all cause and effect fueled by the very same exposition that people think they hate so much. Season 2 itself started with like 5.5 episodes of delegations and meetings, so clearly the meetings were not the issue. What worries me the most about all this isn't necessarily the fact that people might not enjoy an anime whose light novel I enjoyed, but it's more so the fact that it has effects on other things. The people that make these kind of hypocritical takes on mostly baseless facts seep into internet culture and start infesting the rest. And look, I know it sounds like some stupid thing your teacher would say, but it really is true. I mean, we have examples in real time. Isekai has become one of the most infested and overpopulated genres of anime in the last decade-ish. You ever wonder why? Because people eat the shit up like Gordon Ramsay himself cooked it up. In reality, it's just some dude from Kitchen Nightmares. But it is true. Isekai anime keep raking in money. Whether we look at the international or domestic audiences, people are always on that shit like it was the last requirement to be in a Mr. Beast video. And the goal of anime studios is ultimately money. It's a business regardless of passion. If it don't pay the bills, they ain't making it. So if people start complaining about too much yapping in anime, we're about to see a whole new age of mute anime. Straight hands, no story. Then again, in that case, we might be able to finally solve sub versus dub. The answer was always neither. Who would have thought? Somehow Isekai is about to get worse. It's completely understandable that people found this season more boring, but it really is a necessary step towards building the story. For people to call it bad is absurd, but at the end of the day, it's just some people, not everyone. In my opinion, this season wasn't terrible. It just left a lot to be desired, and I understand why people could say that it was boring. It definitely was more boring than it should have been. But these small things, regardless of how slow they may seem, always entertain me the most. If you think otherwise, let me know. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe. Have a nice day. Peace.